Welcome to the Idea to Value podcast, where in every episode we highlight the latest insights into creativity and innovation from experts around the world. I'm your host, Nick Skillicorn. I care about the evidence behind what makes ideas happen, and I've already helped thousands of people just like you through my unique insights into recent scientific findings of how creativity works. I also show you how to turbocharge innovation programs so they finally deliver on the value and ideas you've been struggling to execute. Get your free training on how creativity can be improved by registering now at www.ideatovalue.com. Now let's get on with today's episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Idea to Value podcast. I'm very happy to have Rodd Chant with me today. Rodd Chant has got an interesting title. He calls himself a creative something. So Rodd, it's wonderful speaking with you today, and I understand we're going to be talking about what it takes to be a creative director or any person sort of trying to make it in the creative fields.
Hey Nick, yeah, it's great. It's great to be chatting, and thanks for the invite.
So for people who don't know about you and your background, can you just give us a quick rundown of what you've been doing in the creative fields?
Okay, I'll try and give the abridged version. I started out in music originally when I first left school. I left school early. After time doing that, both on and off stage, believe it or not, I was actually also a roadie. I stumbled into the advertising industry, kicking off as a copywriter here in Sydney, Australia. Started building up my career, and then within about 8 years, I think of that, I took off to Singapore, take on a role up there at a hot agency up in Singapore, working on major brands. Did that for a couple of years, came back to Australia for short stints, set up my own agency, and then took off again back to Singapore. It was like a yo-yo. And went up to Singapore to be the executive creative director of Publicis, a major agency up there. And then after that, got asked to move over to New York to be the executive vice president, executive creative director of FCB for Cone Belding. And then stayed in New York for 11 years. Worked with a couple of took on another ECD role with a Japanese branding and design firm, which saw me splitting my time between New York, Singapore, and Tokyo. Long story short, I decided it was time to come home end of December 2018, and now I'm back in Sydney.
So it's a veritable who's who of the world's advertising juggernauts that you've worked with. And I'm sure you've got some interesting perspectives on what it takes to be a creative director. But what I want to start out with maybe the simplest question, or maybe the most complicated question, that a lot of people probably ask themselves: what exactly is a creative director or an ECD, and what do they do?
It's a hard one sometimes. It's not hard. I tell a lie. A creative director, it's like the term, it says you're a director, so you're directing the work. And one of the analogies I often use quite often is, imagine a film director. So imagine, for example, Steven Spielberg is directing a film, Tom Hanks is acting in it. If Tom Hanks doesn't get the role right, isn't getting a part right or a scene right, Steven Spielberg doesn't jump in front of the camera and take over. He directs him, he gives him guidance, he shows him where he's getting it wrong and what he could do to find better motivation or a better approach, etc. Basically, for me, that's what a creative director is. It's, you see what your staff are doing, you help give them some guidance and help them find their way. You don't inject your thinking and your way of doing it. You help them find their own voice and then help them improve it to do better work. So in a nutshell, that's a creative director. But when it gets to being an executive creative director, that's where it gets a whole lot more messy. I like to joke to people that I had friends that are outside the advertising industry. They say, okay, you were a CD, now you're an ECD. What's the E stand for? And I often say Excel spreadsheet. Because, you're in a management role, you're in an executive role, you've got a lot more responsibilities, and, you're working for, make sure that the company, maintains its clients and the bottom line, and it grows, and you're overseeing a lot of people. And with that little E title comes a lot of responsibilities. And I don't use that title anymore. I mean, some people do when they're in small agencies. I don't get it. I don't know how you can be an ECD of a 4 or 5 person business. Doesn't make any sense to me. Because basically you're part of a board, you're in upper management, you're an executive, and that's not really what happens in a tiny spot. But yeah, I think the ECD part, that it's only really relevant when you're right at the top of a big organization. The rest of the time, you're a creative director.
And what do people usually get wrong or right about their expectations of what it's like working in advertising? A lot of my listeners, they're very much in tune with the fact that they want to do creative work and innovative work. And advertising is quite often held up as the most creative industry in the world. In fact, quite often they call themselves the creative industry.
Well, yeah, but there's a big difference. I mean, people have to understand when they get into advertising as a creative person. I mean, I came from music, and I was very much into art and photography when I was young, and you know, music was my passion and my love, and still is, quite frankly. But there's a huge difference when you get into advertising. You got to remember it's commercial creativity. So, I mean, even art directors, before they got the fancy title art director, they were commercial artists. That was their title. You know, you're not an artist. You're working for a brand and for a company who's paying you money to create something that will help grow their brand, their company, their product, their service, increase their bottom line. So you've got a lot of parameters and mandatories you have to work to. So it's not a free for all. There's a lot of restrictions. It's not like being an artist in a garret sitting up there with your easel and painting. You can't do whatever comes into your head. You have to work to a set brief, and there's restrictions, etc. And there was something told to me when I first started in the business by a very, very sage creative leader, and I don't believe he coined this phrase, but from what I've been told, but he said this to me. He said, "Don't forget, you're a salesman first and you're a scribbler second." And it was something I always remembered.
Now, let's move on to the work that you're doing now. You've been at a lot of agencies around the world. What's your current focus?
Currently, since returning to Australia, I'm trying to get to know the Australian scene again. I know the North American market really well after 11 years in New York. I also know the Southeast Asia market and Asia region really well. You know, I did 3 stints in Singapore. I've spent time in Thailand and Vietnam as well, and in Japan. Now I'm trying to reacquaint myself with what's happening back here. So my focus is currently I'm doing consulting work with select brands and agencies, not just here, but also still internationally. I'm still getting to know things here, but I am helping out a couple of people here. But I'm also doing something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and I kind of did in short spurts throughout my career, and that's to help creative people, be they at the beginnings of their career or midterm in their career, or even they've got to sort of the top of their game, but they kind of feel like it's changed a bit and they don't know where to go. So I'm getting into coaching and mentoring people at different segments of their career, and that's something I'm really enjoying, and I'm helping people globally on that, not just here. I'm coaching people, you know, as far afield as North America, and then, you know, also UK and Europe and here. And it's something I find fulfilling because, you know, I've pulled together a lot of experience in 25 years, and I've got a lot of, you know, ways that I can advise and help people that are stuck in certain areas, be it their own personal creative journey. They feel stuck with finding new inspirations and ideas, but also those that want to step up the ladder and maybe go from being a senior creative to a creative director. And that's a big jump. There's not a lot of ways to find out how to do that. You know, quite often you're thrown in the deep end, and, you know, hey, here's your new title, you're a creative director, and throw you in the deep end. Oh, by the way, and here's an anchor to hold on to while you're there. So, you know, yeah. So I want to help people in that.
As someone who's a consultant for companies and a coach for individuals as well, I really empathize with the challenges that you're describing a lot of people go through. I see it in the work that I do as well. But how would you describe the challenges that let's focus first on the individuals and then on the companies you work with. The individuals that require coaching, what sort of aspects of their work and the way they approach their work in your view, quite often holding them back and coaching can help with?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen with, I mean, creative people are all unique individuals. And the one thing I was lucky in running, creative department, I've run creative departments that have been small to very large. I mean, such as in New York. I mean, the agency I was at New York had 1,500 staff in total. That's not all creative, but that's the total staff of the office. So, it was a sizable creative department, and everyone's a unique individual. Everyone has their own challenges. There is no cookie cutter creative out there. There are people that you might, without, this is not meant to be demeaning, but there are some people you might say that are the wallflowers, the real quiet ones over in the corner. And then you've got the loud and boisterous ones. And then you've got the other, you've got such a mix of talent out there, and they all have their own unique abilities that have to be drawn out. But amongst all that, I see people that, self-doubt is a huge thing. Creative imposter syndrome strikes a lot of people. Getting stuck in ruts, just like not finding that inspiration anymore, not finding those new ideas, that confronts a lot of people. There are so many challenges to a creative career, and, and people getting lost and a bit confused about, where do I go from here? Am I doing it right? And, there's no handbook that they reach into in their top drawer saying, this is, what you should be doing now, and you should be doing this. And you can only get those insights from someone who's lived and breathed it. And I like to tell people I've been through so many, pulling my hair out moments in my career that probably explains why I have no hair.
So what can your experience teach people how to overcome these challenges and these self-doubts that you were referring to?
Well, I can show them ways that I navigated. I mean, I've been through it all. I've been through the self-doubt, the creative imposter syndrome. I've been through I'm stuck in a rut. I don't have any more ideas. I don't know where I'm going. I've done it. I've seen it. I've lived it, and I've breathed it, and I've come out the other end, still with a smile on my face, less hair, but still a smile on my face. And so I feel in 25 years of that experience, it's like I basically have my creative MBA at the moment, and the fact that I've done it in 3 different continents, I can actually state categorically that everyone, and it doesn't matter, language isn't a problem. It's nothing. It's everyone has the same issues when it comes to a creative career. I've seen it in so many different markets, and it's like I want to say, look, there are ways to go through it. There's ways to improve what's happening. There's ways to get out of that rut. There's ways to improve your confidence. And so I want to bring all my sort of techniques and skills to help others have a better creative career, because we need more creative people in this world. A more creative world would be a better world, in my opinion. Do
you think that everyone is creative?
Everyone's born creative. Yeah, hell yeah. I mean, there's, I read a report somewhere, on the top of my head, I won't be able to tell you where it came from, but there was something I read not that long ago that said that 5-year-olds basically have the mind of a genius.
Yeah.
And I love that. And it's because we're all born creative. I mean, you take yourself back. There's that other great quote that's seen around the world everywhere, and it's graffitied everywhere, etc. And it says the creative adult is the child who survived.
Exactly.
And I love that, because I truly believe, no offense to the school and education system, but I believe a lot of creativity gets beaten out of children.
The report that you're referring to, I believe, is by George Land, who did a longitudinal study from the 60s. I've written about it quite a lot, so who knows, maybe you're referring to the report that I wrote. But what's interesting is those 5-year-olds, of which like 98% of them or so have a genius level of creativity, by the time they're teenagers and 15, those same children, their creativity has dropped down to about 12%. And there's something happening that's really either growing or beating this creativity out of them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's the school system. I mean, I left school really early. I left school at 15, and I'm proud of that, because I did okay. And, but the school system, I excelled. I can't, I'm just no good at mathematics or science. It's just not my brain. But I was good at music and art, and writing. I mean, I loved writing short stories in school. but that wasn't seen as a career. You know, it was no one ever said, "Oh, you could be a creative." No, I'd never heard of advertising.
You could be a creative in your spare time, is what I hear a lot.
Yeah, and it's silly. I mean, the STEM system that they need to sort of, you know, that the education system, I believe, is basically based on. It needs to change. I mean, you look at there's he's Michio Kaku from the New York. He's a physicist. Gentleman you'll see a lot with long grey hair, always talking about the future and robots and AI and everything else. But he talks about the future of work and how he says creative jobs are going to be some of the most valuable jobs in the future, because creativity is something that the machines can't master. And there's a great video of him on YouTube talking about it, saying, you know, they don't get, you know, what the human brain can do creatively yet. And they're a long way off from the AI, and computers are a long way off from doing it. So we should be encouraging more creative education in schools and pushing it a lot further. And, you know, if a young child wants to color in, if they're asked to color in some fruit, and if the child wants to make a banana pink and an orange purple, let them. Yeah. Any teacher that says, "Oh no, that's supposed to be this and that's supposed to be that," it's already killing their creativity. It's like they're expressing themselves. I mean, if an artist painted a banana pink, they could probably sell it in a gallery for, you know, $25,000, $50,000.
I'm in the wrong career if that's the case.
Well, you know, it's just that we should be encouraging people to be creative. So getting back to your question, is everyone creative? Of course they are, but some people, it gets beaten out of them. But some people lean towards things that maybe it's parental influence. Like, you know, somebody might want to be like their father who's an accountant. They really love going to work days with their father and seeing that. They might love that the mother is a lawyer, and they go, "Wow, I want to be like mum. She's a lawyer. She's great." You know what I mean? So some people could want to follow in the parental footsteps, and that's totally okay. But I do feel that creativity needs to be supported more throughout the entire education process.
Okay, so we've talked about the individuals, and I mean, if you follow my work, you know I can talk for hours and hours on the science behind creativity. But let's get down to the company side and the corporate side. And I want to follow up on something you just said just now, which is around the creativity of machines. Yes, I agree with you. Long-term, machines are never going to be able to be creative in the same way as humans are. But there's more and more aspects of creativity, and especially the work that agencies have previously done, that machines are now being able to produce. So there's machines and algorithms that can create music in a second that would have previously taken the human hours or days to do. Machines can produce artwork, and they can create endless variations of an idea and automatically do testing to see which one resonates the most. Do you think there's any aspects of what used to be purely agency work that are under threat from computers and artificial creativity?
When it comes to good creativity, I'm going to be honest and say no, only because there's no heart and soul in it. I mean, yeah, you know, sure, a machine can churn out some music, but there's no heart and soul in it. I mean, I doubt a machine could ever write something like the song Something by the Beatles, written by George Harrison. That's got so much heart and soul in it. And I can tell you now that the machine is a long way from creating something like that. Yes, the machine can churn out a few beats and blurts and whatever, and do a riff and whatever, because it's mathematics. Music is basically mathematics in a sense. You know, as a musician, I can attest to that. You know, it's a series of structures and chord progressions, and there's a certain limit. So you could program that, but it still has no heart and soul to it. When it comes to art, I'm you know, yeah, okay, they could churn out some art. Is it going to have heart and soul and story to it? No. And, you know, is it going to have a certain emotion? I mean, you look at the difference in artists, like Basquiat is nothing like Dali, who's nothing like Warhol, who's nothing like Banksy. You know, I mean, each individual brings a certain voice to it, and a computer doesn't have the heart and soul and voice. And now when it comes to words, well, then we've seen experiments where they tried recently to have a machine writing headlines and copy, and it was a disaster. I mean, you know, it was the machines. I think the one example of this isn't verbatim, but this is close to what came out. the machine was asked to write a headline for some sort of chicken burger or something for something. And it said something like, "The fried dead bird between the bread." So that's not exactly
really appetizing.
Yeah, that's not exactly because it's a machine. It doesn't get it. It doesn't get the nuances.
Understand the context. Yeah.
And it's something I often say to people about in the machines. If a machine tried to write copy, I can tell you now that, you know, a machine can't write a good fart joke. I mean, you know, it's just not going to be possible because you've got to have a sense of humor. You've got to have a little bit of, you've also got to have had a life. And the other thing that I say, you know, whenever I hired copywriters in agencies, I preferred, or any creative for that matter, including art directors, I preferred to hire people who had had a life. Because what happens when you're telling a story for a brand or whatever, a lot of stuff you glean from life experience. Like, you know, you're talking about, oh, you read this one time, you saw that, you experienced this, you bumped into somebody who did this, you traveled the world and saw these different things where you walked down an alley and you experienced that. That's where the human side comes in. So sure, machines could do certain things, but I think we're a long way off. I mean, from them taking over the roles, the creative roles within an agency. I mean, I still remember, you know, there's even a famous ad that talks to it. It could be, it was a tech company, it could have been IBM, I can't remember who now, that talked about, hey, weren't we promised flying cars by now? You know, and that ad was about 15 years ago. I mean, and we're a long way off flying cars. I mean, I'm sorry. So I think we get a little ahead of ourselves. I mean, it's even when, you know, somebody said to me the other day about, oh, we're going to go to fully digital currency and there'll be no actual coin or paper money ever within a couple of years. I said, really? Have you ever traveled into upper regions of Vietnam or Thailand? Do you honestly think a vendor with a streetcar up there is going to accept a card? That's a long way off. So I think we get a little ahead of ourselves when it comes to technology.
I mean, I was just asking to see what your thoughts were. A lot of business leaders do agree that creativity as a skill is actually going to become more and more and more important as other industries are.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's also creative thinking, as you know, is critical thinking. So I think I'm hearing more CEOs wanting to learn creative thinking, you know, creative thinking, because it actually enhances critical thinking. And, you know, that's where you get ideas from. You don't have to be an artist or a writer or an art director or a photographer or a director to want to enhance your creative thinking skills. You could be a CFO, or, you know, or a CEO who really wants to make sure you're finding the best ideas within your organization. That's critical thinking, and that's a skill that's part of the creative process.
Now, we're coming up to time on the interview, but I want to leave you with a question going back to the work you do with agencies. If agencies are full of these creative people, what are they usually sort of not doing as effectively as they could? What's holding them back from their full potential?
Well, I mean, you know, I can't speak to every agency, some agencies, but I think if I was to be honest, I'd say that a lot of agencies forgot the creative part. And, you know, and it's just being honest, and I'm pretty sure everyone else would speak to this if they were being honest. You know, you can't have an agency without creativity. And a lot of agencies have forgotten the creative part. I mean, no offense to the CFOs, but a lot of bean counters don't get the creative side of it. And if you had an ad agency that had zero creative department in it, zero, not a single person, then what is that ad agency anymore? It's an accounting firm with a whole bunch of people in casual wear. I mean, you know, it's not a creative operation anymore. If you didn't, so you need the creative people. You need to have them there. Without them there, there's nothing left. And here's a great example of this. And this is how you know there's a problem. Fast Company magazine produces an annual report every year of the 100 most creative people in business, right? This year, 2019, 0 of them are from advertising agencies.
Wow.
That's a damning insight into an industry that claims to own creativity. Yeah. Not one Now, I'm not saying the Fast Company list is the be all and end all, but come on, not one person. So I think I think agencies got it wrong. They stuck to being reactive and not proactive, right? They waited for work to come in from clients. They didn't create their own products and brands. They didn't create their own things. All the innovations we're seeing, creative innovations in our life currently, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, your Twitters, your YouTubes, your Tumblrs, TikTok, anything, Snap, all of that, not one of those thoughts came from within a creative agency. Now, why not? I mean, there's a whole bunch of creative people sitting there, but I can tell you why not, because the way the agencies are structured and run, they don't encourage it. It's like, wait for the brief to come in, don't do anything till we got the brief. Clients, if you're wholly and solely reliant on outside income, that's a dangerous thing for the future of an agency in this day and age, in my opinion.
Fascinating. I mean, Rodd, I've been really enjoying our conversation today. If people want to find out more about you and the work that you do, what's the best way that they can go about finding that? Probably
the easiest way, because currently I'm like everyone, my website's under construction. They can find me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. I write a lot about these topics on LinkedIn, and I'm a very regular contributor on LinkedIn there. So, just me and my name, RODD CHANT. Or if anyone wanted to drop me an email, they could simply do that at info@chantcreative.com.
Rodd, it's been great speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking again with you soon.
It's been a pleasure, Nick. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked it, please like, share, and subscribe, and leave me a comment about what you thought and what you'd like to see more about. If you want to take your creativity and innovation capabilities to the next level, then invest in yourself with the premium training only available at ideatovalue.com. These exclusive training modules have all been put together by me, Nick Skillicorn, and have been used by thousands of artists, innovation leaders, and CEOs to become better at understanding the source of their creativity and executing on their innovation ambitions. And there is no risk to you, as they're backed by our money-back guarantee. Now, don't forget to go out there and make your ideas a reality. See you again soon.